The kick came before the words. Ethan Cole's Italian leather shoe connected with the shopping bags, sending them skidding across the polished marble floor of Westridge Luxury Mall. Designer boxes tumbled out, spilling tissue paper and ribbons like wounded birds trying to fly. The sound echoed through the corridor, sharp and cruel, making every head turn toward the scene unfolding near the Chanel boutique. A woman stood frozen, her simple black dress and minimal jewelry making her look almost invisible against the backdrop of wealth and excess that surrounded them. But Ethan had recognized her immediately. Maya, his ex-wife, the woman he'd abandoned 3 years ago without a backward glance. And here she was, pretending to shop in a place she could never afford. If you're wondering how a chance encounter can destroy a man's entire world in less than 10 minutes, keep watching, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because this story takes a turn nobody sees coming. Well, Ethan said, his voice dripping with mockery as a small crowd began to gather. He stood tall in his custom-tailored suit, his Rolex catching the light as he crossed his arms. Maya Richardson. Or should I say Maya Cole? Oh, wait, you probably went back to Richardson after I left, didn't you? He laughed, the sound harsh and grating. What are you doing here? Did you get lost on your way to Target? The people around them whispered and pulled out their phones, sensing drama. Maya said nothing, just bent down slowly to gather her scattered bags. Her movements were calm, almost eerily so, which only seemed to infuriate Ethan more. He'd expected tears, embarrassment, maybe even begging. Instead, she moved with a quiet dignity that made him feel somehow smaller. I'm talking to you, he snapped, stepping closer. You think you can just ignore me? After everything? His voice rose, attracting even more attention. Security guards at the far end of the corridor noticed a commotion but didn't approach yet. Ethan's mind raced back 3 years to the day he'd walked out of their small apartment in South Philadelphia. Maya had been working double shift as a nurse, coming home exhausted, her scrub stained and her eyes hollow from lack of sleep. She'd been supporting them both while he found himself and networked his way into better circles. The moment his real estate business finally took off, the moment he got invited to his first country club event, he'd looked at her and seen everything he wanted to leave behind. Her natural hair, her thrift store clothes, her tired smile. It all represented a life of struggle he was desperate to forget. So he'd left a note on the kitchen counter, packed his things while she was at work, and never looked back. He'd heard through mutual friends that she'd fallen apart, lost the apartment, maybe even lost a job. Good, he'd thought at the time. She'd held him back long enough. Now, seeing her here in this temple of luxury, something violent stirred in his chest. How dare she try to rise above her station? You know what I think? Ethan said loudly, playing to the crowd now. Several people had their phones out, recording. I think you're here trying to return some fake bags you bought online. Or maybe you're meeting some old man who's paying your bills now. He laughed again, and a few people in the crowd snickered. That's it, isn't it? You found yourself a sugar daddy because you couldn't make it on your own. I always knew you needed me. Maya, look at you, probably drowning in debt, pretending you belong in a place like this. Maya finally stood, her bags gathered in her arms. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and her eyes held something he couldn't quite read. Not anger, not hurt, something else entirely. Are you finished, Ethan? Her voice was soft but steady, with an undertone of something that almost sounded like pity. That look, that tone, it enraged him more than any insult could have. Before he could stop himself, he reached out and grabbed her arm roughly. Don't you dare look at me like that, Ethan hissed, his fingers digging into her arm. You're nothing, Maya. You were nothing when I met you, and you're nothing now. Whatever little fantasy you're living, whatever lies you're telling yourself, just remember who left who. Remember who wasn't good enough. The crowd had grown larger now, at least 20 people forming a loose circle around them. Some looked uncomfortable, others entertained. Maya pulled her arm free, and for the first time, he saw something flicker across her face. Not fear, not shame, just a slight smile, sad and knowing. "You should let go of me, Ethan," she said quietly. "Right now." But he didn't. Instead, he reached for her bags again, ready to scatter them once more, ready to humiliate her completely. That's when the lights dimmed. Every single light on the entire third floor of Westridge Luxury Mall went dark except for the emergency lighting. The escalators stopped. The music cut off. And through the sudden silence came the sound of footsteps, measured and deliberate, approaching from the direction of the private elevator that only VIP clients and owners used. Ethan froze, his hand still reaching for Maya's bags, as a voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "Get your hands off my wife." What happens when the man who abandoned his wife comes face to face with her new husband? Will Ethan's arrogance finally catch up with him? Drop a comment below with your predictions. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because next chapter reveals exactly who Maya's mysterious husband is and why even the security guard are trembling. Ji-hoon Park moved through the dim corridor like a force of nature, his presence commanding immediate attention from everyone who'd gathered to watch Ethan's cruelty. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's car, and his expression was carved from ice. Behind him came 6 security personnel in black tactical gear, their A-pieces glowing red in the emergency lighting. The crowd parted instinctively, phones still recording but hands now trembling. Ethan's grip on Maya's shopping bags loosened, and confusion flooded his features. Who was this man? Why had the entire floor gone dark? And why did every security guard in sight suddenly look terrified? Ji-hoon stopped exactly 3 feet from Ethan, his dark eyes scanning the scene with surgical precision. The scattered bags, Maya's slightly reddened arm where Ethan had grabbed her, and Ethan himself, frozen in mid-reach like a statue of his own arrogance. When Ji-hoon spoke again, his accent was slight but his authority was absolute. "I'll say it once more. Step away from my wife." Ethan's laugh came out strangled, disbelieving. "Your wife? What kind of game is this?" He looked at Maya, then back at Ji-hoon, his mind scrambling to make sense of what he was seeing. "This is Maya Richardson. She's a nurse from South Philly. She can barely afford rent, let alone." He gestured vaguely at Ji-hoon's obvious wealth. "Whatever this is, you've got the wrong person, man. She's probably scamming you." Ji-hoon's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, tapping it twice. Suddenly, every screen in the mall, every advertising display, every directory board, every television in every store window flickered to life with the same image. A wedding photo. Maya, radiant in a stunning white gown, standing beside Ji-hoon in a garden that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. The date stamp read 8 months ago. The location, Park Estate, Beverly Hills. Ethan's face went pale. Around them, people gasped and whispered. Several started frantically Googling on their phones. "Maya Park," Ji-hoon said, his voice carrying across the silent floor, "is the Chief Operating Officer of Park Medical Solutions, the largest private healthcare network in the western United States. She oversees 43 hospitals and holds a master's degree in healthcare administration from Stanford, which he completed last year." He stepped closer to Ethan, who stumbled backward. "She is also my wife, my partner, and the mother of my 6-month-old daughter. And you just put your hands on her." The security team moved forward, forming a wall between Ethan and Maya. One of them, a woman with captain's bars on her shoulder, spoke into her radio. "Code Black confirmed. Subject has made physical contact with Mrs. Park. Awaiting orders." Ethan's world tilted. Stanford? Coop? Daughter? His mind couldn't process it fast enough. "No," he said, shaking his head. "No, that's impossible. Maya was broke. She was nothing. She couldn't even afford to fix our car. He turned to look at Maya, really look at her now, and saw what he'd missed before. The simplicity of her dress wasn't cheap. It was expensive minimalism. Her shoes were Louboutin. Her watch was Patek Philippe. And her eyes held the calm confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove to him or anyone else. Maya finally spoke, her voice steady and clear. "Ethan, I was never broke. I was supporting you. She handed her shopping bags to one of the security personnel and stepped forward, standing beside her husband. Every double shift I worked, every sacrifice I made, was because I believed in you. I believed in us. But you didn't leave me because I wasn't good enough. You left because you were too insecure to be with someone who actually had substance. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. After you abandoned me, I fell apart for about 2 weeks. Then I got angry. Then I got focused. I went back to school. I finished my master's degree. I met Jihoon at a healthcare conference in Los Angeles where I was presenting on emergency room efficiency protocols. He saw something in me that you never could, my actual worth. She glanced up at Jihoon, who placed a protective hand on the small of her back. We built something real together. A partnership. A family. A life. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. His carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time, broadcast to dozens of phone cameras. Here's what's going to happen, Jihoon said, his tone businesslike now. You're going to be escorted out of this mall, which I own, by the way. Westridge Luxury Mall is part of the Park Holdings portfolio. You're banned from every property I control, which includes this mall, 6 hotels in Philadelphia, and the office building where your real estate firm currently leases space. Ethan's eyes widened in horror. Your lease comes up for renewal next month. It won't be renewed. You have 60 days to relocate. Jihoon pulled out a business card and handed it to the security captain. Also, call our legal team. Mrs. Park was assaulted on camera. I want a restraining order filed within the hour. He turned back to Ethan, his expression finally showing emotion, pure contempt. You kicked my wife's shopping bags. You grabbed her arm. You tried to humiliate her in public because your fragile ego couldn't handle seeing her happy without you. But here's the truth, Mr. Cole. Maya was always going to be extraordinary, with or without you. She just had the misfortune of wasting 3 years trying to lift you up to her level. The security team closed in around Ethan as the lights slowly came back on. But before they could escort him away, Maya held up one hand. "Wait," she said, and everyone froze. She walked toward Ethan, stopping just out of his reach, and when she spoke, her voice was soft but carried a weight of 3 years of pain and triumph. "I forgive you, Ethan. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger would mean you still have power over me. And you don't. You never will again." She turned and walked back to Jihoon, who wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Take him out," she said without looking back. As security grabbed Ethan's arms, his legs nearly gave out. But the nightmare wasn't over. Through the crowd came a woman's voice, sharp and familiar. "Ethan? Ethan Cole." He turned to see Vanessa Morrison, his current girlfriend, standing near the Gucci store with shopping bags of her own and an expression of absolute shock. She'd clearly seen everything. Beside her stood her father, Marcus Morrison, a prominent attorney and city councilman who Ethan had been desperately trying to impress for months. Marcus's face was set in stone, his disappointment palpable even from 20 feet away. Vanessa dropped her bags and they hit the floor with the same sound Ethan's had made when he'd kicked Myers, a sound that now felt like a death knell for everything he'd built since leaving his ex-wife behind. The public humiliation is just beginning. What will Vanessa do now that she's seen Ethan's true colors? How far will Jihoon go to protect his wife? Comment below and smash that like button, because next chapter shows exactly how Ethan's entire life starts to unravel, piece by piece. And trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Security escorted Ethan through the mall corridor while phones continued recording every humiliating second of his removal. His arms were gripped firmly by 2 guards who moved with military precision, their faces expressionless as Ethan's Italian leather shoes scraped against marble floors he would never walk again. The whispers followed him like a shadow, growing louder with each step. "That's a guy who kicked his ex-wife's bags. He grabbed her arm. Did you see? I can't believe he didn't know she married Jihoon Park. Who doesn't know who Jihoon Park is? The man owns half of Los Angeles." The word stabbed at Ethan's consciousness, each one a reminder how catastrophically he'd miscalculated. His eyes darted desperately toward Vanessa, who stood frozen near the Gucci store, her face a mixture of shock and disgust. Her shopping bags lay scattered at her feet, forgotten. Beside her, Marcus Morrison crossed his arms, his expression carved from granite. This was the man Ethan had been courting for 6 months, hoping to secure connections that would elevate his real estate business into the upper echelons of Philadelphia society. Marcus was a kingmaker in the city, a man whose approval could open doors that money alone couldn't unlock. And Ethan had just destroyed any chance of that approval in less than 10 minutes. If you think Ethan's day can't get worse, stay tuned, because what happens when he tries to explain himself will shock you. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Vanessa, baby, wait, Ethan called out, trying to pull free from the security guard grip. They held firm, not roughly but with enough pressure to make it clear he wasn't going anywhere except out. This isn't what it looks like. That woman, Maya, she's lying. She's always been a liar. We had a toxic relationship But Vanessa held up one perfectly manicured hand, silencing him. She walked forward slowly, her heels clicking against the floor with the rhythm of a judge's gavel. When she reached him, she didn't yell or cry. She simply looked at him with a kind of cold assessment usually reserved for something distasteful discovered on the bottom of a shoe. "I saw you kick her bags, Ethan," Vanessa said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor of anger underneath. "I saw you grab her arm. I heard every disgusting word that came out of your mouth. You called her nothing. You mocked her clothes. You tried to humiliate her in public because you thought she was beneath you." She glanced back at her father, who nodded once, and that single nod seemed to give her strength. "My father taught me to judge people by how they treat those who can't fight back. You just showed me exactly who you are." Ethan's mind raced, searching for the right words, the right angle, anything that could salvage this disaster. "Vanessa, you don't understand the history between us. Maya and we had problems. She was always so needy, always demanding my attention when I was trying to build something. She held me back for years. When I finally got free from her, I could breathe again. I could become the man I am today." The desperation in his voice was palpable now, sweat beading on his forehead despite the mole's perfect climate control. "Everything I did to become worthy of you, to become the kind of man who could stand beside you and your family." But even as the words left his mouth, he could see they were having the opposite effect. Vanessa's expression hardened further, her jaw tightening. Behind her, Marcus Morrison shook his head slowly, disappointment radiating from him like heat. Several other shoppers had gathered closer, their phones still recording, capturing every moment of Ethan's unraveling for social media immortality. One woman whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "He's making it worse. Just stop talking, dude." But Ethan couldn't stop. The panic had taken over, flooding his system with adrenaline and terrible judgment. That man she's with, that Korean guy, is probably just using her, Ethan continued, his voice rising. "These rich foreign businessmen, they collect women like trophies. Maya doesn't understand that. She thinks she's special, but she's just another—" He never got to finish that sentence. Marcus Morrison stepped forward, moving with a kind of authority that came from 30 years of commanding courtrooms and city council chambers. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, his salt and pepper hair perfectly groomed, his suit immaculate. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of judgment. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to give you some free legal advice, which is the only thing you'll ever get from me for free. Stop talking. Right now. Every word out of your mouth is being recorded by at least 15 people. You've already committed assault on camera. Now you're adding xenophobic remarks and defamation to the list." He stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could smell his expensive cologne. "Ji-hoon Park is not just any businessman. He's a personal friend of mine. We sit on 3 charitable boards together. I was at his wedding to Maya Park 8 months ago, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that what they have is real, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Everything you clearly never gave her." The security guard began moving Ethan again, but Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled out his own phone, tapped it a few times, and turned the screen toward Ethan. It showed a text message thread, and Ethan's stomach dropped as he recognized names. There, in digital black and white, were messages between Marcus and several of Philadelphia's most influential business owners, all members of the same country club where Ethan had been desperately trying to gain entry. The most recent message, sent just 2 minutes ago, read, "Ethan Cole is not to be admitted to Riverview Country Club. Character concerns. Will explain at next board meeting. Marcus Morrison." Below that, responses from other board members. Agreed. Seconded. Already blacklisting from Chesapeake Club as well. Ethan's vision blurred as a reality crashed over him like a tsunami. The country club membership he'd been pursuing for 18 months, the networking opportunities he'd counted on, the social elevation he'd sacrificed his marriage for, all of it evaporating in real time because he couldn't control his cruelty for 10 minutes in a public place. "Vanessa," he tried one more time, his voice breaking now. "Please, we can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can—" She removed the diamond bracelet he'd given her for her birthday last month, the one that had cost him $8,000 he'd barely been able to afford, and dropped it into her purse. "We're done, Ethan. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come to my office. If you do, I'll have security remove you, just like they're removing you now." She turned to her father. "Daddy, I'm ready to go." Marcus wrapped an arm around his daughter's shoulders and guided her away, but not before shooting Ethan one final look that promised consequences still to come. The security guards pushed Ethan toward the exit, and as they moved through the mall, he caught glimpses of his downfall reflected in store windows and phone screens. Somewhere behind them, he heard Maya's voice, calm and professional, thanking the security team. He heard Ji-hoon making a phone call, his Korean-accented English crisp as he spoke to what sounded like attorneys. And he heard the crowd, still whispering, still recording, still spreading his humiliation across the internet at the speed of light. When they finally reached the parking garage exit, the head of security handed Ethan a formal letter on Park Holdings letterhead. "You're banned from all Park Holdings properties effective immediately. Violation will result in arrest for trespassing. Your employer will receive notice that your office lease will not be renewed. You have 60 days. Then they released him, and he stood alone in the parking garage, the letter trembling in his hands, his phone buzzing incessantly with notifications. He pulled it out with shaking fingers and saw his social media exploding. The video from the mall were already going viral. #abandoned wife revenge was trending. His business phone was ringing off the hook, and in his text messages, he saw a group chat with his real estate partners, the last message from his senior partner reading, "Emergency meeting. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. You better have explanations." Ethan's public humiliation has gone viral, his relationship is destroyed, and his business is crumbling. But the real consequences are just beginning. What will happen at that emergency meeting? How far will Ji-hoon Park go to protect Maya? Drop a comment with your thoughts and hit that subscribe button, because next chapter reveals a devastating professional fallout that will leave Ethan with nothing. Ethan sat in the conference room of Cole & Associates Real Estate at exactly 7:45 the next morning, 15 minutes early for the emergency meeting that would determine his professional fate. He hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit wrinkled from being thrown on in panic, and his hands trembled slightly as he scrolled through his phone, watching his life disintegrate in real time across every social media platform. The video from yesterday had exploded overnight. #Molkama had 17 million views on TikTok. Twitter was flooded with threads dissecting his cruelty frame by frame. Instagram influencers were using his face as an example of toxic masculinity. Reddit had 3 separate megathreads analyzing the situation, with users digging up every detail of his life they could find. Someone had already located his LinkedIn profile, his business website, and his company's Google reviews, which had plummeted from 4.8 stars to 1.2 overnight, buried under hundreds of 1-star ratings and scathing comments. Imagine doing business with a man who treats his ex-wife like garbage. This is who you want handling your home sale. Abusive, arrogant, and cruel. The comments scrolled endlessly, each one another nail in his professional coffin. If you think losing your girlfriend and your reputation is bad, wait until you see what happens when your business partners find out you're a liability. Stay with us and don't forget to like this video. The conference room door opened, and 3 men walked in with expressions that told Ethan everything he needed to know before anyone spoke a word. Gerald Patterson, the senior partner and founder of the firm, was 62 years old with silver hair and a reputation for building one of Philadelphia's most respected boutique real estate companies over 3 decades. Beside him was David Chen, the firm's corporate counsel, carrying a leather folder that Ethan recognized as a kind used for termination paperwork. The third man was Richard Knowles, the firm's head of client relations, whose phone was pressed to his ear as he finished a tense conversation. Yes, Mrs. Henderson, I understand completely. We're addressing the situation as we speak. I assure you this does not reflect the values of our company. He hung up and sat down heavily, rubbing his temples. Gerald took his seat at the head of the table, folded his hands, and stared at Ethan with a kind of disappointment usually reserved for catastrophic failures. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating, before Gerald finally spoke. Ethan, do you have any idea how many clients have called us since yesterday afternoon? His voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it lay volcanic anger barely contained. 23. 23 clients, representing over $40 million in active listings and pending transactions. And do you know what every single one of them wanted to discuss? Ethan's throat was dry. He tried to swallow but couldn't. Gerald, I can explain what happened. The video doesn't show the full context. My ex-wife, Maya, she. But Gerald held up one hand, cutting him off with a gesture that felt like a slap. I don't care about your ex-wife. I don't care about your personal drama. I don't care about whatever justification you constructed in your head. He leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower, which somehow made it more menacing. What I care about is that our firm's name is now associated with domestic violence, public humiliation, and the kind of behavior that makes us radioactive to clients. Do you understand what you've done? You didn't just embarrass yourself. You embarrassed every person in this company, every agent who's worked their whole career to build credibility, every client who trusted us with the biggest financial decision of their lives. David Chen opened his folder and slid a stack of printouts across the table. Ethan recognized them immediately. Screenshots from social media, online articles, even a segment from a local morning news show discussing the incident. The headline on one article read, "Real estate agent shocking mall attack on ex-wife goes viral." Another, "Billionaire's wife confronts abusive ex-husband in luxury mall." Richard Knowles spoke up, his voice tight with frustration. 3 of our biggest clients have already pulled their listings. The Hendersons, the Kolskis, and the Martinez family. That's $12 million in potential commissions, gone overnight. We have 7 other clients threatening to leave if you remain with the firm. Our corporate clients, the property management companies, the investment groups, they are all asking questions. They want to know what kind of due diligence we do on our agents. They want to know if this is a culture we cultivate here. He pulled out his phone and turned it toward Ethan, showing him an email. This is from Meridian Property Group. They represent 30 commercial properties in our portfolio. They are putting our contract on hold pending review of our organizational ethics and personnel standards. Do you know what that means in corporate speak, Ethan? It means they are looking for a reason to fire us, and you just handed them one wrapped in a bow. The weight of it all pressed down on Ethan's chest like a physical force. His breathing became shallow. These weren't just setbacks. This was total annihilation. Everything he'd built over 5 years with his firm, every connection, every deal, every ounce of credibility, all of it crumbling because of 10 minutes of vindictive cruelty in a mall. Gerald pulled out another document, this one clipped together with official-looking letterhead visible on top. This arrived by courier at 6 this morning. It's from Park Holdings' legal department. They're informing us that our office lease, which comes up for renewal next month, will not be extended. We have 60 days to vacate the premises. Do you have any idea what it costs to relocate an entire real estate office in 60 days? The moving expenses, the business interruption, the client notifications. He tossed the document across the table, where it landed in front of Ethan like an accusation. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that Ji-hoon Park owns or has majority stakes in half the commercial real estate in Philadelphia's business district, which means finding a new location just became exponentially more difficult and expensive. Because who do you think controls the buildings would want to move into? The realization hit Ethan like ice water. Ji-hoon wasn't just punishing him. He was punishing everyone associated with him, making it clear that Ethan Cole was toxic, that anyone who stood by him would suffer consequences. David Chen cleared his throat and opened his leather folder fully, revealing the termination paperwork that Ethan had known was coming but had desperately hoped to avoid. Ethan Cole, effective immediately, your partnership with Cole and Associates Real Estate is terminated for cause. You will surrender your client lists, your access to company systems, and your company credit cards by close of business today. You will not contact any current clients or prospects. You will not represent yourself as affiliated with this company in any capacity. Your final commission checks on closed deals will be processed according to your contract, minus penalties for early termination and the costs associated with your actions. He slid the papers across the table with a pen. Sign here, here, and here. Ethan stared at the documents, his vision blurring. Everything he'd worked for, destroyed. His hand shook as he picked up the pen, and for a moment he considered refusing, fighting back, demanding his rights. But what rights did he have? He created this disaster. Every consequence was earned. The pen touched paper, and his signature appeared in 3 places, each stroke feeling like he was signing away pieces of his soul. When he finished, David collected the papers without a word and tucked them back into his folder. Gerald stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. Security will escort you. You will not speak to any other employees. You will not access any client files or company information beyond what's in your immediate office space. After today, if you contact anyone at this firm for any reason other than contractual obligations, we'll consider harassment and respond accordingly. He walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. You know what the saddest part is, Ethan? You were talented. You had real potential. But you let your ego and your cruelty destroy everything. And the woman you tried to humiliate? She's thriving. She rebuilt herself into something remarkable. While you're sitting here watching everything burn, Maya Park is probably having breakfast with her billionaire husband and their daughter, living a life you can't even imagine. I hope it was worth it. The door closed behind them, leaving Ethan alone in the conference room with the ruins of his career scattered across the table in the form of termination papers and social media printouts. His phone buzzed. A text from his landlord. So the videos. Need to discuss your lease. Call me. Another buzz. His car dealership. Payment on your BMW is past due. Contact us immediately. Another. His credit card company. Unusual activity detected on your account. Please verify recent charges. The dominoes were falling faster now, each one triggering the next. His professional reputation was destroyed. His social connections were severed. His financial stability was crumbling. And somewhere in Beverly Hills, in a mansion he'd never see, Maya Park was probably waking up in silk sheets next to a man who actually valued her, completely unaware that her ex-husband's entire world had collapsed in less than 24 hours. Or maybe she did know. Maybe Ji-hoon had told her over breakfast. And maybe, just maybe, she felt nothing at all. Because she'd already spent her grief on Ethan Cole 3 years ago, and now she was too busy living her best life to care about his suffering. That thought, more than anything else, made Ethan want to scream. Ethan has lost everything. His job, his reputation, his future. But there's one more person he hasn't heard from yet, and when that call comes, it'll reveal just how deep the consequences go. Comment below if you think Ethan deserves what's happening to him, and hit subscribe because next chapter takes an emotional turn that shows us Maya's side of the story and the painful journey she took to get here. Maya Park stood in the nursery of her Beverly Hills home, moonlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows as she rocked her 6-month-old daughter, Lily, back to sleep after a late-night feeding. The room was decorated in soft creams and pale blues, with hand-painted murals of cherry blossoms on one wall, a gift from Ji-hoon's mother, who'd flown in from Seoul when Lily was born. Maya hummed quietly, an old gospel song her grandmother used to sing, and watched her daughter's tiny face relax into peaceful sleep. This moment, this simple act of motherhood in a home filled with love and security, felt like a dream she'd once thought impossible. 3 years ago, she'd been broken, abandoned, questioning every choice she'd ever made. 3 years ago, she'd wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. Now, holding her daughter close, she knew the answer. She was more than whole. She was free. But freedom, Maya had learned, came with a cost that few people understood unless they paid it themselves. If you've ever wondered what it takes to rebuild your life after someone destroys it, stay with us, because Maya's story will break your heart and inspire you at the same time. Don't forget to subscribe. The night Ethan left, Maya had come home from a 16-hour shift at Temple University Hospital's emergency room to find their small apartment in South Philadelphia unnaturally quiet. She called out his name, kicked off her nursing shoes, and noticed immediately that something was wrong. His shoes weren't by the door. His jacket wasn't on the hook. The baseball cap he always wore was gone from the coffee table. She'd walked through their apartment slowly, her heart beginning to pound, checking the bedroom, the bathroom, the closet. Half of everything was missing. His clothes, his laptop, his toiletries, even the framed photo of them from their wedding day that used to sit on his nightstand. Gone. On the kitchen counter, weighted down by an empty coffee mug, was a single piece of notebook paper with 3 sentences written in his familiar handwriting. I can't do this anymore. I need to focus on my future. Don't try to contact me. That was it. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of her working doubles to support his dreams while he networked and built his business. 3 years of love and sacrifice and belief, reduced to 3 sentences on notebook paper. Maya had stood in that kitchen for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the note trembling in her hands, her mind unable to process the betrayal. Then she collapsed onto the linoleum floor and cried until she had nothing left. The next 2 weeks were a blur of barely existing. Maya called in sick to work for the first time in her nursing career, spending her days in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what she'd done wrong. She'd supported Ethan through everything. When his real estate license exams drained their savings, she'd picked up extra shifts. When he needed new suits for client meetings, she'd worn scrubs everywhere, even on her days off, to save money. When he complained about her long hours at the hospital, she'd apologize for not being there enough, for being too tired, for not understanding his ambitions. She'd made herself smaller and smaller, hoping it would make him love her more. And in the end, it hadn't mattered. He'd left anyway, the moment he no longer needed her support, the moment his business started succeeding, the moment he got invited into circles where a nurse wife from South Philly didn't fit the image he wanted to project. The realization of how thoroughly she'd been used hit her like a physical blow. But then, on the 15th day after he left, something inside Maya shifted. She'd been lying in bed, scrolling mindlessly through social media, when she saw a post from a nursing school classmate who'd gone back for her master's degree. The woman looked vibrant, accomplished, happy in a way that had nothing to do with a man's validation. And Maya thought, why not me? Why couldn't she be that woman? Why was she lying here, broken, when the person who'd hurt her was out there living his best life, probably not thinking about her at all? That day, Maya got out of bed, took a shower for the first time in 3 days, and applied to 5 master's programs in healthcare administration. She went back to work the next Monday with her head held high, ignoring the pitying looks from colleagues who'd heard about Ethan leaving. She picked up even more shifts, not because she had to earn more, but because she wanted to, because work gave her purpose and direction when everything else felt chaotic. She moved out of the apartment she'd shared with Ethan into a smaller studio near the hospital, and she painted the walls herself in colors she loved, deep teal and warm gold, colors Ethan had always said were too bold. She cut her hair into a natural style she'd been afraid to try while married, worried Ethan would make comments about it being too ethnic or unprofessional. She started going to therapy, working through the trauma of abandonment and the patterns that had made her accept so little love while giving so much. And slowly, painfully, she began to rebuild herself from the foundation up, not as Ethan's wife or Ethan's supporter, but as Maya Richardson, a woman with her own dreams and her own worth. 6 months later, Stanford accepted her into their prestigious Healthcare Administration Master's program with a partial scholarship. Maya had cried when she got the acceptance letter, but these were different tears, tears of pride, of possibility, of doors opening instead of slamming shut. 2 years into her Stanford program, Maya attended a healthcare innovation conference in Los Angeles, where she was presenting research on emergency room efficiency protocols that could save hospitals millions while improving patient outcomes. She'd been nervous, standing backstage in a borrowed blazer, clutching her notes and wondering if anyone would even care about her work. Then she'd stepped onto that stage, looked out at 300 healthcare executives and administrators, and found her voice. She spoke with passion and precision about the research she'd conducted, the data she'd analyzed, the solutions she'd developed. And when she finished, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, as she stood near the refreshment table, still riding the high of a successful presentation, a man approached her. He was tall, well-dressed, with kind eyes and a slight accent when he introduced himself. Ji-hoon Park, CEO of Park Medical Solutions. He'd been impressed by her presentation, he said, particularly by her innovative thinking about resource allocation in understaffed emergency departments. They talked for an hour, then 2, the conversation flowing easily from professional topics to personal ones. Ji-hoon told her about growing up in Seoul before moving to the United States at university, about building his company from the ground up, about his passion for transforming healthcare delivery systems. Maya told him about her journey, though she left out the painful part about Ethan at first, focusing instead on her drive to make a real difference in how hospitals operated. When the conference ended, Ji-hoon asked if he could take her to dinner. That dinner became breakfast the next morning, which became a weekend together, which became phone calls every night for 3 months, which became Ji-hoon flying to San Francisco every weekend to see her. He'd met her in the middle of her healing, after she'd already done the hard work of rebuilding herself, and he'd fallen in love not with a broken woman who needed saving, but with a strong woman who'd saved herself. 6 months after they met, he proposed on a beach in Malibu at sunset, getting down on one knee and telling her in English and Korean that she was a partner he'd been searching for his whole life. They married 3 months later in an intimate ceremony with close friends and family, and Maya had worn a dress that cost more than a year of her old rent, walked down an aisle covered in rose petals, and said her vows to a man who saw her brilliance instead of feeling threatened by it. When Lily was born 6 months ago, healthy and perfect, Ji-hoon had cried and told Maya she'd given him everything he'd ever wanted. And Maya had held their daughter and thought about how far she'd traveled from that apartment floor where she cried over a 3-sentence breakup note. She'd traveled so far that Ethan Cole was nothing more than a chapter in her origin story, a painful but necessary part of the journey that had led her here, to this life, to this love, to this moment of holding her daughter in the moonlight and feeling completely, utterly at peace. Yesterday's confrontation at the mall had stirred up old feelings she thought she'd buried completely, but as she laid Lily back in her crib and pulled the soft blanket over her tiny body, Maya realized something important. She genuinely did forgive Ethan, not because he deserved it, but because she no longer needed to carry anger for him. His cruelty yesterday had revealed to everyone else what she'd already known and moved past, that he was small, insecure, and trapped in a life built on ego instead of substance. She had nothing to prove to him, nothing to say to him, nothing to feel about him except perhaps pity for the life he'd chosen and the growth he'd refused. Maya walked back to her bedroom, where Ji-hoon was sitting up in bed, reading, glasses on, reviewing contracts on his tablet. He looked up when she entered, concern immediately filling his expression. "Is Lily okay?" he asked in his accented English that she'd grown to love. Maya climbed back into bed beside him, and he immediately wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "She's perfect," Maya said softly. "I was just thinking about everything. About where I was 3 years ago and where I am now." Ji-hoon set aside his tablet and turned to face her fully, his hand cupping her cheek gently. "Are you okay? Really okay?" "I know seeing him yesterday was—" "I'm more than okay," Maya interrupted, and she meant it. "I'm grateful that he left, because if he hadn't, I never would have found myself. I never would have gone back to school. I never would have met you. I never would have Lily." She kissed him softly. "Everything that happened, as painful as it was, led me here, and I wouldn't change it for anything." Ji-hoon smiled, that warm smile that had first caught her attention at the conference, and pulled her closer. "You're the strongest person I've ever known, Maya Park, and I'm honored to walk beside you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, while across the country in Philadelphia, Ethan Cole was probably sitting in darkness, scrolling through videos of his own destruction, realizing too late what he'd thrown away. But Maya didn't think about that. She didn't need to anymore. Her story wasn't about Ethan's downfall. It was about her rise, and she was still rising. Maya has found peace, love, and a life beyond her wildest dreams. But Ethan's story isn't over yet. What happens when he makes one final desperate attempt to fix everything he's destroyed? The final chapter will show you whether redemption is possible or if some mistakes can never be undone. Comment your thoughts and subscribe, because next chapter brings his emotional journey to a conclusion you won't see coming. Ethan sat in his nearly empty apartment 3 weeks after the mall incident, surrounded by cardboard boxes and the remnants of a life that had imploded with shocking speed. The eviction notice on his coffee table was dated for next Friday. His bank account showed $473. His phone hadn't rung with a job prospect in 12 days. The viral videos had ensured that no real estate firm in Philadelphia would touch him, and his attempts to rebrand himself in other cities had failed when background checks inevitably led hiring managers to the footage of him kicking his ex-wife's shopping bags across a luxury mall floor. He'd lost weight. His suits hung loose on his frame, and the mirror showed a man who looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. His mother had called twice, her voice filled with disappointment after seeing the videos, asking him how she'd raise a son who could treat a woman that way. He hadn't been able to answer her. He hadn't been able to answer anyone, least of all himself. But tonight, sitting in the darkness with a bottle of whiskey he couldn't afford and a laptop open to Maya's LinkedIn profile, Ethan made a decision. He would apologize. He would find her, face her, and tell her everything he should have said 3 years ago. Maybe it wouldn't fix anything. Maybe she'd reject him. But he had to try, because the alternative was living with his crushing weight of regret forever. If you think you know how this story ends, think again. This final chapter will challenge everything you believe about forgiveness, consequences, and second chances. Stay until the end and subscribe for more stories like this. Finding Maya's location wasn't difficult. Her professional profile listed Park Medical Solutions headquarters in Los Angeles, and a little digging revealed that she and Ji-hoon own a home in Beverly Hills, though the exact address was private. Ethan used the last of his savings to buy a one-way plane ticket to LAX, telling himself this was an investment in closure, in redemption, in becoming a better man. He didn't think about how desperate this made him look. He didn't think about restraining orders or how this might be perceived as stalking. He only thought about the apology he'd rehearsed 1,000 times in his empty apartment, the words he perfected, the contrition he felt deep in his bones. He arrived in Los Angeles on a Tuesday morning, rented the cheapest car he could find, and drove to Park Medical Solutions' gleaming headquarters in Century City. The building was all glass and steel, reaching 30 stories into the California sky, with a Park Medical Solutions logo displayed prominently above the entrance. Security in the lobby was tight, corporate, and professional, and when Ethan approached the desk and asked to see Maya Park, the guard's expression shifted immediately to suspicion. "Do you have an appointment?" the guard asked, his hand moving subtly towards something under the desk, probably a panic button. "No, but I'm an old friend. I just need 5 minutes of her time. Please, it's important." The guard typed something into his computer, and Ethan saw his own face appear on the screen, along with red text he couldn't quite read from his angle. The guard's expression hardened. "Sir, you need to leave the building immediately." "Please, just let me explain," Ethan said, his voice rising with desperation. "I came all the way from Philadelphia. I just need to talk to her. 5 minutes. I just want to apologize." But 2 more security guards were already approaching, moving with the practiced efficiency of people trained for exactly this situation. "Mr. Cole, you are banned from all Park Holdings properties. That includes this building. You need to leave now, or we will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing." One of the guards gestured toward the exit, while the other spoke quietly into a radio. Ethan's heart pounded. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to see Maya, to tell her he was sorry, to somehow make her understand that he'd changed, that he'd learned from his mistakes. "I'm not leaving until I speak to Maya," he said, and even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a mistake. The guards moved faster then, each taking one of his arms, not roughly but firmly, guiding him toward the glass doors. Ethan tried to pull free, his voice getting louder. "Maya, Maya, if you can hear me, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Please, just give me 5 minutes." People in the lobby stopped and stared, pulling out phones. The security guards tightened their grip and pushed him through the doors out onto the sidewalk, where the California sun felt harsh and unforgiving. "If you return to this property, you will be arrested," the head guard said firmly. "Mrs. Park has been notified of your presence. Leave now." They went back inside, leaving Ethan standing on the sidewalk, shaking with adrenaline and humiliation, once again the center of unwanted attention as people walked past, recognizing him from the viral videos, whispering and pointing. Ethan sat in his rental car for 2 hours, parked across the street from Park Medical Solutions, watching people come and go from the building, hoping to catch a glimpse of Maya. He knew this was wrong. He knew this was exactly the kind of behavior that had gotten him banned in the first place. But he'd come this far, spent money he didn't have, burned his last bridge to get here, and he couldn't leave without trying one more time. At 3:30 in the afternoon, he saw her. Maya emerged from the building wearing a navy business suit, her natural hair styled beautifully, carrying a leather briefcase and talking on her phone. She looked professional, confident, completely at ease in a world that had once seemed impossible for the tired nurse he'd abandoned. Ethan's breath caught. She was radiant, successful, everything he'd never believed she could be without him. And seeing her now, seeing the evidence of how wrong he'd been, how completely he'd underestimated her, made something crack open in his chest. He got out of the car before he could talk himself out of it, jogging across the street, dodging traffic. "Maya," he called out. "Maya, please wait." She stopped, turned, and her expression cycled through surprise, recognition, and then something that looked like weary resignation. She ended her phone call and waited as he approached, her posture straight, her face calm. When he reached her, breathing hard from the run and the emotion, she simply looked at him with those same eyes that had once looked at him with love and now held nothing but polite distance. "Ethan, you need to leave," she said quietly. "There's a restraining order being filed. You're not supposed to be here." I know, but please just listen," Ethan said, the words tumbling out desperately. "I came all the way from Philadelphia because I needed to tell you I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you, for abandoning you, for the mole, for every cruel word, for not seeing your worth when I had the privilege of being married to you. You were amazing, and I was too insecure and stupid to see it. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because my ego was more important than your heart, and I paid for it. I've lost everything. My job, my girlfriend, my reputation, my future, everything. And I deserved it. I deserved all of it." Tears ran down his face now, and he didn't care who saw. "But I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost. I understand what you were trying to give me and how I spit on it. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, truly sorry." Maya listened without interrupting, her expression never changing, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was gentle but firm, like a doctor delivering difficult news to a patient. "Ethan, I appreciate your apology. I do, and I believe you're sorry, truly. But your apology doesn't obligate me to anything. Not forgiveness beyond what I've already given, not reconciliation, not even this conversation. I've moved on. I have a husband who loves and respects me, a daughter who's the joy of my life, and a career that fulfills me. Your presence here doesn't fit into that life anymore." She adjusted her briefcase. "What you're looking for? Absolution, closure, some sign that you're not the villain in this story. I can't give you that. You have to find that within yourself." Ethan felt something break inside him, the final hope shattering. "So that's it? I lose everything, and you just walk away?" The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. Maya's expression hardened slightly. "Yes, Ethan, that's exactly it. Because consequences aren't supposed to feel fair to the person experiencing them. They are supposed to teach you something. And if you're standing here, after everything, still thinking about what you lost instead of who you hurt, then you haven't learned anything at all." She started to walk away, toward a black Mercedes that had just pulled up to the curb. The driver got out, Ji-hoon Park, dressed casually in slacks and a button-down shirt, looking at Ethan with an expression that held no anger, just complete indifference, as if Ethan were a stranger who'd stopped his wife on the street. "Maya, are you all right?" Ji-hoon asked, his accent soft, his concern only for her. "I'm fine," Maya said, smiling up at him in a way she'd never smiled at Ethan, a smile full of genuine love and partnership, just an old acquaintance who was leaving. She turned back to Ethan one final time. "I hope you find peace, Ethan. I really do. But you won't find it here, and you won't find it in me. Goodbye." She got into the Mercedes, and Ji-hoon closed the door behind her with careful tenderness. He met Ethan's eyes for just a moment, and in that look, Ethan saw everything he'd never been. Protected without being possessive, strong without being cruel, secure enough to love a powerful woman without feeling threatened. Then Ji-hoon got into the driver's seat, and they drove away, leaving Ethan standing alone on the Los Angeles sidewalk as the California sun began to set. He stood there for a long time, watching the Mercedes disappear into traffic, and finally understood. Maya hadn't needed his apology to heal. She'd heal without him, despite him, in the space he'd left empty when he walked away. His redemption wasn't hers to grant. It was his to earn, alone, through the hard work of becoming someone different, someone better, someone who would never treat another person the way he'd treated her. The viral videos would follow him forever. The professional consequences would last for years. The regret would be his companion for the rest of his life. But maybe, if he actually did the work, if he actually changed, if he learned to value people for who they were instead of what they could do for his image, then someday he might look in the mirror and not hate the man looking back. That was the only redemption available. Not forgiveness from Maya. Not absolution from the internet. Not even a second chance at the life he'd destroyed. Just a long, difficult journey of becoming worthy of the grace he'd once been given and squandered. Ethan walked back to his rental car as the streetlights began to flicker on. He had a flight back to Philadelphia in the morning and an empty apartment waiting for him. He had no job, no prospects, and no easy answers. But for the first time since the mall confrontation, he understood something true. Maya Park hadn't gotten revenge by destroying him. She'd gotten it by building something so beautiful that his destruction was simply collateral damage, a necessary clearing of obstacles from her path. And the most powerful revenge of all was that she'd barely had to think about him to do it. She'd simply lived well. And that, Ethan realized as he started the car and pulled into Los Angeles traffic, was a lesson worth learning, even if it had cost him everything to understand it. And that's how this story ends. Not with dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet truth that some mistakes can't be undone, only learned from. Maya found her happiness not through revenge, but through resilience. What did you think of this ending? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional stories about love, loss, redemption, and second chances. Remember, the best revenge is living well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.